This is Getting Past Subtitles. My name is Sean Peel,
And I'm DK Lee.
and welcome to week number 3 of our Park Chan-Wook revenge series, filmography kind of thing. We're 3 movies in, 1 left to go. We're wrapping up the Vengeance trilogy, the OG trilogy anyway. The next film is also kind of a revenge film, though, and we know that he's working on another, but whatever. Last week we did Old Boy, really good, right? His most infamous. If anybody knows him because of that film. And so the direct follow-up of that movie was another revenge film called Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. And it's nothing like Mr. Vengeance. It's just like the title that they share.
What do you mean?
They're pretty like wildly different movies. Like they're both about revenge, sure.
Yeah.
But like the way it's like shot, like style, it's all pretty different. It's pretty different. It's definitely the most different out of all the films.
I think it's similar to Old Boy, but definitely not as similar to Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Yeah. I think
for sure.
Like it's just that Old Boy and this film are both pretty stylized.
They're like, it's interesting because there are elements of Mr. Vengeance that is stylized.
Right.
But then it's more, I feel like it's more akin to Memories of Murder.
Right. It's more gritty.
Yeah.
It's like the grittiest.
Whereas Old Boy and this one, Miss Vengeance, is a lot more stylized, like you said.
Yeah. I can have fun with this movie, and I can kind of have fun with Old Boy. I can't have fun with Mr. Vengeance.
Yeah.
Something for Mr. Vengeance, you know?
Yeah, it's a little, it feels more grounded for some reason.
Yeah.
I feel like for Mr. Vengeance.
Yeah, this feels more in the world of like, I'm in a movie.
Yeah, it feels like, there are things going on that are almost surreal.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is very purposeful.
Yeah.
Like, I'm noticing more and more, and funny enough, I don't know why I never really noticed this, but as we're doing this series now, I'm like, his style and like his filmmaking just gets more and more stylized as we go
Yeah,
on.
I think he's going into it,
Yeah, 100%. He's like becoming like a staple genre kind of director. And I'm like, I never really kind of pieced those things together. So I'm interested to see like even the last one, kind of how that shifts. Because that's like the most modern film.
Yeah.
So these are kind of a little dated per se, right? A little early 2000s. So
I feel like this one, Miss Vengeance, really, I think it's the most modern. Like it feels very modern.
Yeah.
In the way that it's like in the pacing of it and also how it's shot and all of that. Really, it's like the gateway to the modern like style of Whereas I think the other two that we watched still retained a bit of that old feeling. I don't know how to explain it exactly.
It's kind of like frugalness a little bit.
Yeah,
like in the way like they didn't have much to work with in terms of like CGI or like editing techniques, just like things like technology wise maybe.
They still had a little technology, but also kind of in the way that it was shot felt a lot more almost like raw. I don't know how to explain it, to be honest.
Like run and gun almost. Like,
almost. Yeah. Where I mean, Old Boy was also kind of it was leaning more towards Miss Vengeance. I think if we were to put it on a spectrum, but it still retained a bit of that. Whereas I think Miss Vengeance had like it feels very polished. Maybe that's the right word.
Right.
Like it feels refined.
We have techno cranes on set now.
And I think he kind of like knew how, like he was getting used to the workflow of it and how to kind of produce it in a way that
things that come with like bigger budget, right? Like when you're working with like larger crews and better equipment and like you're kind of being accustomed to using those things fluently. I see what you mean by that. Was this your first time watching Lady Vengeance?
This is my second time.
Your second time?
Yeah.
Tell us about your first.
By no means I think like is it bad because of that? I think it was good. Like it really kind of is a good example of how to do it well, maybe like having a big production, having like big like talent like everywhere. Like there's so much people like cameos and all of that. It's packed with like just like
stars.
Yeah, like just a list
No,
talent.
no, like C role in the movie is filled by some extra picked off the street, basically.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I watched this way back too. And to be honest, I don't really like remember my first impression of it. Like I don't think it had a big impact on me. But watching it again now, it's a lot more. And I can watch it with more perspective, and I think, yeah. So like I have more to say about it.
Right.
Whereas I think when I watched it when I was younger, I didn't really have any like commentary, or like I didn't really have anything that like I thought about which was like relevant or which was interesting for me to like talk about.
Right.
Whereas now, like after watching it, like, and I just like watching a lot of movies, right, and then watching this again, and kind of like looking at it with different perspectives and kind of seeing what kind of maybe influences that he might have had, or even just like how I like perceive it, like different like shots and different scenes, and looking at it, I'm like, oh, that kind of looks like something from this movie, or you know, this feels like he did this because he wanted to do that, or like I have a lot more filmic knowledge, and I know the vocabulary to express the thoughts that I have about the movie.
That was the word I was looking for.
What?
Vocabulary.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So definitely I enjoyed it a lot more.
I actually agree like 100% what you say, because I remember, like I said, I pretty much watched all these movies in sequence back when I did first see it. So this is also my second time watching Lady Vengeance. But I, like, same thing, I didn't have like a huge impression of this movie at the time. And like I said, it was kind of the weakest link, I think, of all of them. By no means am I saying like it's bad. It just wasn't as strong as the other two. And like I just kind of had forgotten a lot of the minute details and like the scene by scene. There was just a couple of scenes that really stuck with me at the time. But like I said, I also just didn't really have like the vocabulary to maybe like express the whole thing, or like really had like the knowledge or like perception, or hadn't seen enough movies to kind of like, you know, maybe have my own point of view on it like I do now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so definitely this time around watching it, it was like not only sort of, you know, grinding the gears again, like remembering the movie, but also kind of like really forming an opinion on it now, and kind of seeing it for what it is, and like, you know, things that I liked or things I didn't like, or what worked and what didn't, and also too just comparing it to the other movies again, but just kind of like a little better or maybe a little more constructed in that sense. So it was definitely a worthwhile second watch for me.
Yeah.
And I think in general, if this is your first time watching the movie, it kind of begs a second watch. I think it's just one of those movies that, like, because it's kind of a mystery in like how they put together the exposition and what happens to Geum-Ja, and it's like once you just have all the pieces of the puzzles together, then when you go back and watch it again, you kind of appreciate like the building and like how the process of making the bigger picture, rather than just enjoying the bigger picture itself. You know what I mean?
If I were to like put it in a very simple way, I think Miss Vengeance is the most catered towards the general audience. Yeah. Old Boy is the most catered towards like the artistic, almost like indie, not really, but like that kind of audience, like very like the fringe audience, right?
All the film buffs.
And I think Memories of Murder, I think Mr. Vengeance is the most like filmically like fundamental, like very fundamentally sound film, I think.
Yeah. It's funny because like, I mean, it comes with like, in these three movies itself, it's kind of a testament to just him like learning as a director, because, you know, with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, he just came off like the big high of JSA, and so he kind of did whatever he wanted to do, and it felt like very, like I said, like very like raw, very like independent filmmaking, very kind of like maybe experimental in that way, just but like thematically, you know, like you just like I want to tell the theme of vengeance and I want to do it like the most hardcore way I can, you know. So it really like stuck to its guns in that way, and so it was very much like personal to him and like just really nailing filmmaking down. And like I said, with the second one, it's kind of like a little, it ups the stakes a little bit, and you know, maybe a little more for an audience, but like I said, kind of targeted to still like film buffs and people that kind of.
It felt like he wanted to prove something for Old Boy, whereas I feel like for Miss Vengeance,
it's kind of like I can do this like same thing, like take this really hardy like theme or like sort of intelligent thing and put it in like something that you can like bite into essentially. Like it's accessible. Like I'm trying to make something that is accessible to people when you probably think it wouldn't be. Right? You know what I mean? Like if you think of genre, you're not thinking like a super thematic film. You're thinking like, oh, it's just gonna have like, stars Keanu Reeves and like some big action blockbuster.
Yeah, so I feel like Miss Vengeance is the most most what did you say? The most
like blockbuster.
Yeah, like most what's the word? You just said
I
it.
Just said it. Keanu Reeves.
No, not Keanu Reeves. Most accessible, like
accessible.
most.
Okay.
Yeah, like most, like you know, like it's easiest for people to digest. I feel like Miss Vengeance.
Yeah, 100%.
I was like, dude, what's the word?
Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves is easy to digest.
True.
True. But no, yeah, like it's got a bunch of. I mean, like it's a pretty violent film. But like even down to the casting, like you said, it's got everybody in it. You know what I mean? Like by that time, everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I was like reading interviews and stuff. Like it's particularly for a Western audience that doesn't know Lee Young-ae, but like she's like really big in the East, like not only Korea, but like,
she's huge.
Yeah, just like everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like him talking about like, I wonder. There's definitely gonna be like a disconnect when I showed it to like Western hemisphere, like the U.S. and stuff, because particularly with her, like her typecast as being like really innocent, right? Like being like this young innocent beauty kind of person, and doing this role completely subverts that.
Yep.
So he was really playing into like, you know, there's this figure that everybody sees her as, but then she's
even in the movie too, right?
Right. Yeah. Where she's like, you know, she's the kind-hearted witch was like her title in the film.
Yeah.
You know. So that was really interesting to see, kind of an interesting, like, maybe lost in translation a little bit, per se. But but like I said, everything kind of caters towards, like, I'm really throwing this at a general audience. You know, he's clearly took into consideration, like, people when he was making this film, you know? Whereas, I don't know if I could say the same about the other two, even for Old Boy, honestly.
Yeah, it's very hard to digest Old Boy, I think.
Right. So... But yeah, but like we're saying, like it's just kind of a progress in how he's like thinking as a filmmaker and knowing like kind of his scale and who is he giving it out to. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you say what would you kind of prefer maybe out of?
I mean, you know, watching all three again, I think I enjoyed Miss Vengeance the most out of the three, and then probably Old Boy, and then Mr. Vengeance. I keep trying to say Memories of Murder, dude. Like that's like in the back. You know, it's the same character. That's why I'm like, it's just detective.
It's you. It's just a different.
It's also because like it was made around the same time.
Yeah. It's the same thing, but not the same thing. It's
But anyways, brother. So I actually enjoyed Miss Vengeance a lot, and maybe it's because like we were just seeing all the like the male versions of Vengeance, and then it's finally like a female, and it's very like refreshing, right? Maybe that's why I was like, oh, something that feels very new, like very different, and maybe I enjoyed that.
I had the same point. We can talk about it later, but I had the same exact point. It just feels like a breath of fresh air a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially when we're going back to back on the other two.
All revenge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, okay, so how can we make this a little bit different?
Exactly.
That's a very easy way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, variety is key. Like, if you're going to talk about the same thing 3 movies in a row, you better find some kind of variety.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, So we'll get into it really quick. We're gonna introduce a new little topic here, and that is gonna be we're gonna do 2 minutes on a synopsis. We're gonna play a little game and see if we can stick to it. So I got myself a timer. I don't know. We're gonna call it. Should we call it quick takes? Should we?
Sure.
We're gonna call it quick takes. I initially thought when I was thinking of this, I was gonna do 60 seconds, and I was gonna call it like 60-second synopsis, right? But then I timed myself with the one.
You're like, no, I need at least 2 minutes.
Like it's really not that much. But then like as I was like reading it,
Because when you speak it takes longer, right?
Yeah. And I was like, I was going, yo. I was like, I was really trying to speak like clear, concise, but like efficient.
Yeah.
And I looked at the clock when I was done. It was like 2 minutes and a half. I was like, nah. All right, let's do like up it another 60 seconds. Should be doable. All right, let's see what I got here. Okay, ready, set, go. So Lee Geum-Ja, released in prison after being sentenced to 13 years because she confessed to a murder, but it ended up that she didn't commit the murder. The murder was of a young boy named Won-mo. Immediately after being released, she seeks the help of her old cellmates to help with the plan that she had been working on since her incarceration. That is to find, capture, and kill the man who is the real murderer and framed her for the crime. Her revenge will be enacted in the same way that she had dreamt about it. So first off, she visits Won-mo's family and chops off her fingers in exchange for an apology. Then she asks for 2 favors from people in order to craft a gun that's basically an antique from her dreams. And then she goes to get a job at a bakery because she was really good at it in prison, apparently. Geum-Ja goes to acquire about her lost daughter, whom she was separated after she went to prison, and finds out that she was adopted to a family in Australia. She pays a visit to them, and after some wild events from Jenny, who's her daughter, Geum-Ja is forced to take her back to Seoul with her. After some random events, we find out that another old cellmate of Geum-Ja is actually now married to Mr. Beck, who is an elementary school teacher and is the man that she's looking for. So her plan is to drug him and let Geum-Ja kidnap him, and basically that's it. But after Beck finds out that his wife is playing a double agent, who turns out to be the priest, if you remember the priest, but he's actually like this private eye who's photographing and keeping tabs on Geum-Ja the whole time, and finds that that his Mr. Beck's wife is an accomplice to Geum-Ja, basically. So to retaliate, he tries to capture her. He's going to kidnap her and murder her, and captures his wife. But kind of the plan fails, and Geum-Ja ends up murdering the 2 guys, and ends up actually kidnapping Mr. Bach. So he takes her to an abandoned school building, where she plans to enact her revenge, but she discovers a charm on his cell phone along with an orange marble that belonged to Won-mo, and it was his favorite. The other 4 charms belonged to 4 other kids who he murdered as well. So the investigation opens back up on Geum-ja's terms. She finds the tapes of the other children that were captured and murdered, and videotapes of them like holding ransoms. So she gathers the detective on the case as well as the victims' family members and brings them all together and reveals the truth to them. And she gives them 2 options. She says, like, we can hand them to the police, or you can take your own personal revenge. And they all vote to do the latter. And so they all take turns stabbing Beck with weapons of their choice, and he ends up getting buried, and Geum-ja leaves the gun that she made with him. And the story basically finishes up at the bakery while they all celebrate their children's birthdays. And there's this nice little moment with Geum-ja and her daughter that kind of ties it all up.
At the end.
Damn it. 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Dang.
I'll get there.
That was good.
It's okay. I set the score, guys. 323. Let's go.
I mean, I think I can make it in 2 minutes, but I think it'd be very sparse.
You like cut it in half.
There's major plot points.
This person's alive, then they're dead.
Yeah.
Story over.
It's like, what was that person's name again? Who knows?
I don't know. They were a man.
Yeah.
They were about this old. So there's that. So I'm gonna talk about something. So on my second watch through, things that I kind of realized compared to my first one.
Mhm.
I actually don't think I picked up on the fact that the 4 kids in like the charms
Yeah.
was like a twist. Like I remember watching this and going, oh, like I had a twist moment my second watch through, and I was like thinking back, like why didn't I not remember this?
Like why didn't it hit?
Yeah, I just remember like I just went along with it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Obviously, it's supposed to be a twist.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's 4 different charms.
Yeah.
And then the marble, and she realizes it. Right. She's like,
Right.
oh wow, this guy has been holding on to this marble for this whole time on it,
Right.
like as a keychain, and she sees all these other like charms on it,
Yeah.
and she like puts 2 and 2 together, and she's like, oh shit, this
That-
guy's been
This guy's been on a spree.
yeah. And so yeah, that's definitely a twist,
Right.
and that like sets the second act, right?
Essentially. Yeah.
And it pushes into the second act with that.
Right.
How did you miss that the first?
I don't know.
I mean, you just probably watched it and you're like, oh yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it is what it is, right?
young and ignorant, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's all like a very show don't tell thing because there's really no dialogue in that whole scene
Yeah.
either. It's just like
Her, like
her-
in shock.
yeah.
And
just like her huge reaction, and then she just beats the shit out
Yeah.
of him, does murder him.
Yeah.
Right. And then it goes into like you said, kind of like the second half of the movie. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, just realizing like also how stylized the film is one thing. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how so like we talked about it before, just how blockbuster this movie is kind of just how
even
like
from the beginning, right? From the
100%,
start.
100%.
Like even the title screen, the title
Yeah,
the title shots, all of that, with the white and the red, and
Mhm.
then you see like you don't even see like whole parts, you just see like different parts of like the blood and
right. Yeah,
the blood turns into the makeup and her face and the red eyeshadow and all that. It's just very stylized and
Yeah.
it's like very blockbustery.
typical like intro. Movie
Yeah, you
sequence
could
of,
kind of like see it from like maybe like a Bond movie or something, right?
exactly
In the
yeah,
beginning, right?
Exactly, just like Deadpool or something.
Yeah, like
Just,
Deadpool or something like that. Yeah,
something like that.
but very well done. I actually really like the title
Mm.
shots, and
He does that a lot. I mean, he did that for. Did he do that for Old Boy?
he did that for Old Boy. Yeah,
Yeah. So.
but it was I mean, obviously different, but
yeah.
he did something along those lines.
Along those lines.
I like it. I like when they have clever use of like putting in the titles and putting in like all the different like the director or whatever, like all the producer, and putting all those
Not making
titles.
it boring.
Yeah, making it fun, like making it interesting. I really feel like that's also part of like the filmmaking process, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like making that feel interesting.
Yeah.
Which I think when we watched Satoshi Kon, like that's what I liked about that movie, Tokyo Godfathers too,
Yeah.
which is like the clever use of putting like the names and the different frames and stuff like that.
Incorporate. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I love that as
incorporating.
well. Like when they incorporate it into the scene, like the movie's already playing, but it's like
Right.
it's very what's his name? Like Baby Driver.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. It's
Yeah.
very like Edgar Wright kind of thing. He does that a lot.
Yeah.
But yes, that's kind of all I kind of picked up on. I mean, I've never seen this movie in the like regular version either. So you watched the Fade to Black and White version, right?
When I watched it, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't watch it this time around?
No, when I watched it right now,
Oh.
when I watched it this week,
Okay,
I
okay.
watched it Fade to
Ori-
Black.
Originally.
Originally, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't even find the original version.
Really?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I gotta do some extra digging.
Well, the Korean ones are all like original.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the newer ones are all like Fade to Black.
Probably. Yeah. Because I think it only came out in a DVD version.
The Blu-ray version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a segment.
Fade to
So they
Black.
probably just like whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But it's funny because now I just can't see it without it, you know?
Mhm.
Like even just the way the story's told and like tonality and obviously thematically, like it really fits. I mean,
so much better.
Yeah.
Fade to Black.
I mean, I definitely believe it was his intention to do it like that.
Yeah.
And it was like more of an afterthought to cut it and then but obviously whatever bonus he put it back in. Because even I think in the regular version, he uses the environments to sort of mute the colors in the film, even though it doesn't desaturate. Like in the beginning with the church, like everything is like bright colored red and blah blah blah, and then later on it's like the abandoned school building is more gray. She wears like black leather, like everything is kind of muted in the production. But like I said, it just kind of fits like in the movie holistically, obviously.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially when the ending hits.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you get kind of. It's great because you don't really even notice it until you kind of blink a little bit.
When it's fading,
Yeah.
you don't notice it, right? It's very gradual, and I think that's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like like a cut and then everything else from there is like black and white, but
Yeah.
it's like a real fade
Yeah.
into the black, and that like really starts to happen once he gets captured. Well, it really, you can really see it. I think the most when they like the two henchmen that he hires tries to kidnap the main character and
Right.
Geum-Ja and their daughter, and that's when it really kind of starts heavily fading, right? And then by the time we get to the abandoned schoolhouse,
Right.
it's really like fading.
Yeah. Once like she gets the family members together,
Uh-huh.
like then it's basically black and white,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the entirety of it. But yeah, I was gonna point that out. Like that's definitely the moment where, like, it heavily shifts.
Yeah,
When
it's especially, it's like the moment like it really flips is when she finally has Mr. Beck in the he's tied up.
Yeah.
And then she starts like smacking him in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's like, and then she like looks towards the camera.
then
That's when it's like really like, oh, like it's like turning to black and white.
we're not in color world.
No,
anymore.
we're not in. No,
It's a whole different ball game.
no, yeah.
What did you think of it though? What did you think of
When I think of the black and white,
Yeah.
the fade to black, I think
the
it's
viewing experience?
it's perfect in terms of the themes and the way that the movie, what things that the movie is trying to say.
Right.
Like it's perfect that it's black and white and like, well, not just black and white, the fade to black and white.
Yeah.
Because like there is a piece of dialogue that she says to Jenny at the very end when she's like be white, like be white like this cake that I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like yeah, like black, like that's perfect, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
she's telling Jenny to not be tainted, right?
Yeah.
And like the black and white kind of represents that, right? There is no gray, there is no like other colors, right?
Right.
There is gray. There's no other colors. There's just black or there's white. And there's no room for any other colors, and just like be pure like black and white. Right. And then that is encapsulated in the film itself, and I think that's a really perfect way to kind of address that theme.
Yeah.
And make that theme known in the film.
And just like the catharsis in that scene.
Right, and just all of that like coming together, like the snow coming down, the cake white, and then you see and she's black, right? Like Geum-Ja's wearing all black.
Yeah.
And and then the narration, like Jenny is doing the narration of like what she thought during that time, and like what she's thinking.
Spoiler alert! No, I'm kidding. Okay.
What she's thinking about, like her mother and like how she technically still didn't achieve salvation, right? Like she's still, but she's still okay.
A little better than
A little better than before. And so like all of that I think is just really just perfectly encapsulated in that fade to black.
100%. Yeah, and even just like on the opposite side too, like it's black and white can kind of represent like both purity but also like starkness as well, and that's the feeling that you get when it first shifts, when the tone is like really down and like now we're in like a more mature space,
and also
and it's,
like
super brooding.
Sorry to cut you off,
sorry,
but also that moment when the parents are all in the classroom, and like she's telling them, like she's showing them like all the videos and all of that's happening, and I think the black and white kind of also represents the two choices that they have, right?
Right.
Like you can either like go towards like the justice of the systematic justice, or you can
Take
have
it in
your own
hands.
personal justice. And that's also like a black and white thing. I feel like there is no
Yeah, exactly.
there is no like
Yeah,
other way.
yeah. They just like they conversate about it. There's really no like other way. It's kind of like
You do this or you do that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also say like you can't just like cop out, right? Like the one person was the one family was like, oh, I have like my wife has heart issues.
Yeah, it's like I'm
Like,
weak
I
to
don't
the
think we
stomach.
can do this. It's like, no, like everyone has heart issues here right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
what are you talking about? And that also is like kind of showing like, like you can't like put one foot in and try to be on both sides. You just have to commit.
You're either part of this or you're not.
Well, we kill you
Until
too.
we kill you, you'll be buried right next to him.
Yeah.
Right on top of him. Yeah. I mean, even like to the movie itself, right? Like when you watch the movie, like you said, it's really split into like a first act and a second act. And they're completely different movies when you really think about it. And like just having it black and white really cements like, oh, I'm in a whole different like space. Like I'm watching something completely different from what just happened. You know what I mean? And that really just, adds to just everything else in that sense. Which I'll kind of talk about later. But what kind of scene specifically did you really kind of like? Did you really enjoy?
Just mentioning the scene in the classroom with the parents, and when they're starting to debate and talk about like what to do in that situation, because basically Geum-Ja gives them an ultimatum, right? Like they're like she says, you can either go with the justice system, or you can take the matter into your own hands. And that scene, like really, like it's funny because before I would have never like thought of it this way, but watching it really reminded me of like 12 Angry Men. I don't know if you ever watched that movie.
Yeah.
But it's basically a movie with it's basically a movie about these jurors who are trying to decide on a verdict for this case, right? And they're like basically just stuck in this one room, and they're like all discussing, and it just felt so much like that for some reason for me.
Now that you mention it, kind of.
Yeah.
100%.
And it was just like a really like neat like little like reference that I just made in my own mind. Because I obviously don't know if this was inspired, right? Like I don't know what the director's intentions were in trying to create that scene. But because of the black and white, plus like that's like just the scene itself, like it really like made me think, oh wow, like
it's kind of like
was this intentional? Like
it's like formulaic, or just like what kind of happens when you have like all those things together,
right?
Like I said, black and white really adds to like that nostalgia feel to it. But just having all those party members like in the room together, having to
the
discuss
tension,
right? Like I mean, they literally are deciding the verdict
of this one man
together, and also just the different personalities of each family member or person in that room, right? Like I said, like I think it was the parents of one more. They were backing out and they were trying to make excuses, and one person's like, no, like we're all in this. Like there's just different personalities all around you, and they inevitably have to come to a conclusion, and it's just like that vibe of we got to figure it out, even if we all don't. We come from different backgrounds, and we may not agree with each other on a personal basis, but we have to like figure out what's going on.
And that's why I like that scene a lot more than if like when I watched it before. Like just like little things like that kind of like helped me to appreciate that like the scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, that's one of the scenes I would say like I really enjoyed.
Yeah. No, I really liked that scene. I actually really liked there's a lot of what I find about this movie is that there's a lot of like choices that he makes like in techniques and like editing and stuff that really are neat and cool. And I just found myself like, oh, that's cool. And one of them is like the use of flash forwards. It's like when you first get introduced to the family, they're all sitting at the table and there's like a shot of them and there's like a quick flash of like their reaction like in the room. Like I really like that kind of setting the stage for what's literally going to happen in the next minute or two.
Like the moment of the grandma like falling off the chair.
Right.
but that's like they show it before the actual like shot of
Exactly.
her watching
Right.
the video.
And it like, you know, I think in hindsight, it's, well, why is that there? It feels a little redundant. But it just kind of adds to like the tone of it all a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It just,
It definitely adds to the like it makes you already like it puts you in the shoes of those people, right?
right. Yeah. It's kind of like gearing you up, almost so, like subconsciously to like, you know, like now we're going to go into this space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not just like giving it to you out of the blue.
Mm.
And it's like, here's a super like hardcore shocking topic of like these kids dying just out of nowhere. It's just like, we're going to gear you up to what to kind of expect.
Yeah.
Like just kind of like a smooth way of like putting you in that zone without explicitly telling you. I think that was really necessary. I think instead of just kind of flipping the switch as a shock all of a sudden, in that way. But I mean, he uses that technique a few, like just fast forwarding and obviously flashbacks with the prison mates. But when we first get introduced to Mr. Beck as well, there's like that quick when she shoots the dog, there's that quick shot of Mr. Beck, right? And then we kind of, I mean, it pieces that together. Like this is the source of why she just murdered a dog for one. But then it immediately leads into the introduction of the antagonist of the movie, right?
And he also shows the moment, you know, when she's when all the news reporters are there and she's simulating her like, you know, doing the murder or whatever, and like she looks up on the hill and like he's up there like it's like good job. Yeah, whatever, like that.
Oh my god.
All of that, I think, you know, like is kind of adding to that.
Right. Yeah, and that's why that scene in particular is kind of why I said you have to watch this movie a second time. Like just that scene alone, honestly, just to like, because you see it like once you're watching the first half and that scene happens, it's just kind of like a bit of a teaser or a taste, but you still don't really know what's going on in the context of everything.
And even like the moments when like they go back to her past when she was like really young, the teenage years.
Yeah.
And then like her and how she got involved with Mr. Beck and all of that.
Yeah.
Like all of that comes like after
Exactly.
after like seeing all of the murder part, right?
Yeah. It's all uncontextual.
Yeah.
Like that's just the thing.
There's no context really to it. You really have to like piece all of it together.
Exactly.
And then like there's also the stuff about like her being the witch.
Yeah.
But then her also being so like kind and like nice and like and like the duality of that and like figuring out, okay, so what does that mean?
Exactly.
Because like, you know, like she comes out of the prison and like, you know, the Santa people are there and then
they start singing
and then the guy like the preacher or whatever, he gives the tofu to her and he like throws it and you're like, okay, I thought she was supposed to be nice, like what happened? like all of that like adds to the intrigue.
Yeah, exactly.
While you're watching it,
it's a mystery.
Yeah.
And I get into that bit because like I have a little, I think like my biggest quarrel, quote unquote, is like with that, like really just the first act of it. But I get to it. I want to talk about some of my other favorite scenes. I actually really like, there's one line that I love, and it's when, so she goes to one of the prison mates who's is married to this guy, and they have a very like Bonnie and Clyde relationship, right? They like robbed the bank, and that's why she was in prison. And her husband's like, I don't know, like a mill worker or something like that. And she brings him the specs for the guns and asks him to make it. And so once it's done, when she's back from Australia, he's like telling her about like how to use it, like what the range of the gun is, and he's like explaining what the range is. And he says it's good if you can hear the heart beating, and it's even better if you can see the sweat on his forehead.
Yeah.
And then followed by like the shot of like his arm, and it drags, and you see his tattoo.
Yeah.
And the tattoo is like an arm shooting a gun leading up to his hand.
It's an arm shooting a gun of another arm shooting a gun of another arm shooting a gun to his arm shooting a gun.
It's just cool. Like,
yeah.
It is just like a neat thing.
Yeah, just little details like that are just so great.
Yeah. It's like so smart. It's just like, that's neat to see.
It's like, I mean? this is the range. You don't want to be like here,
Yeah.
you know, like you want to be here.
Yeah, and just like the line is cool, like
Yeah.
like the quip of the line. You
And
know?
I like how it's referenced again when the kidnap scene happens.
Yeah, she's
and
like,
then
even in that moment, she didn't forget the rain.
yeah,
She's like walks straight up to his
composure.
hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, those little, like, it's like the little things really kind of
Yeah.
matter and they add up to it.
But mentioning that scene, the kidnap attempt scene, it's I think a neat little nod to Old Boy's
Of
action
course.
scene.
Oh my god,
you know?
bro. Yeah.
That take when it's tracking her walking towards
side profile.
towards the guy.
I mean, the whole thing, because, like, who are the two assassins?
Yes, exactly.
Sang Kang-ho and what was the other
Kang-ho.
guy? Oh, Shin Ha-kyung,
Yeah,
who are both the stars of
I got you, bro.
You infected my
I got
brain.
you. Memories of murder.
You infected my brain with this now.
Mr. Vengeance.
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. So that was a cool, like, little cameo.
Mm.
And then he just dies 2 seconds in, you know.
Yeah.
What a waste of star power.
I mean, I like it. It's like
That's really cool.
yeah, it's like, you know, no mercy. It doesn't matter who you are.
It's funny that all the protagonists in the last movies
Uh-huh.
are now the bad guys
Yeah.
in this movie.
Right. And I love the little nod of the newswoman
Yeah.
as
Oh,
Mido.
yeah. Everybody is here.
Everyone's here.
I'll get into it later too, but like this movie is like truly just the conclusion of like the Vengeance trilogy.
Yeah, just everyone's in it.
Like everybody's in it, cast wise,
Yeah.
like even like plot wise, thematic wise.
Yeah.
Because like, what's the feeling that you get at the end of this movie? It's like it feels conclusive,
Yeah.
right? Like it
Yeah.
feels hopeful. Versus the other movies, I didn't feel like that.
Nah.
I didn't feel like that at all.
It oddly feels like redemption somehow
Yeah.
at the end, right?
100%. Yeah.
Whereas the other ones doesn't have that high note.
Exactly.
It ends on a low note almost.
Or at least like in this movie, there's a possibility of like she can redeem herself.
Yeah,
if
there's
she
a
wants.
possibility for sure.
Right. Yeah. The other thing is like I really liked when they're like all the parents and the family members I just love the shot of them sitting in a row on the bench waiting their turn, and they're all just like looking at their knives and putting on the things.
Like all of that, like I keep mentioning it every time it comes up, but it always reminds me of Wes Anderson's like
The symmetry.
the symmetry of it, like you know what I mean,
yeah.
the beauty of the shot, like just the frame.
Yeah.
Like another moment like that is when they finally find the videos and Geum-Ja shows the video to the detective and it's detective in the middle and Geum-Ja on the right, and then the other woman, her friend, on the left. And it's just that perfect, like almost triangular, like
because he's like the tallest.
Yeah, he's the tallest, and just the dynamic of Geum-Ja, who's like just like so stoic, and then the the friend who's like just doesn't care. She's like whatever
like
about it.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, you just have him like about to throw up, and he leaves. It's just like very, I don't know. It works really well, you know. Like it just feels like there's a kind of like purpose. There's a purpose to it, obviously, and there's almost like a harmony in the shot and in the scene.
Yeah,
which I really love about like his movies.
Everything just kind of fits together.
Yeah, like it feels like it's meant to be like that.
Yeah,
like even when you mentioned the gun of like the arm and the gun and the like, it feels like it should be like that, right? Like it had to be like that. Like that's so
you
good.
You can't do that tattoo without doing that shot.
Right.
Like, basically.
And it feels good. Like it feels like it's right.
Yeah.
And that's like something that's like so hard, I feel like, to achieve in films, unless you really, really, really like understand what you want to do and like have that vision of it, which is clearly shown in this movie. Like clearly every movie he's been doing so far that we've seen has that element, and I just love that about it.
Yeah,
that clear like intention. Like nothing is left to chance. Like everything it's like there for a reason. And that's like a mark of a true, like, you know, director.
Yeah,
I think
it's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's really like it's really good, but it's always like it almost feels counterintuitive because we're always playing towards natural. Like the word natural is
Yeah.
such a like kick in the butt. You know,
Uh,
it's like like when performance and like attracting people, we want to get like
Right.
natural something. But like what we're talking about now is like unnatural because it's
no,
like
it's not natural at all.
because
but
nothing is
it's-
left to chance. Like
Right.
this is specific for this thing. You know what I mean?
I don't really like the word natural
Mm.
because I don't think film is natural at all.
Right.
But I think there is an element of believability maybe that I think people want to see. But more or less, like it doesn't necessarily have to be natural, right? Like I don't think some people might, but I don't think most people don't expect like a natural while they're watching a movie, but they do expect a semblance of like being able to believe in what's happening, right?
Right.
Which
Agreed.
I definitely agree with you there though. Yeah.
Just like when the husband takes out the axe and he's like, "Is that stick?" gonna be enough
I
for
love
you?"
the little bits of black comedy in the movie.
Yeah.
Like that moment when he has
He's
the
like,
axe.
I think I'll
He's
be
just-
okay.
yeah. Are you gonna be okay with that knife? With that like little
The
like
thing
piece
is,
of
like, I can lend you mine if you
Yeah.
want. Yeah. Just like I think my favorite is just like the what's the word I'm looking for? Not parallel, but juxtaposition of when the wife goes in because the husband can't like take it.
yeah.
So she goes in for the both of them. And the detective is the one who's explaining
Oh yeah.
the stabbing procedure.
Oh yeah.
He's like, "Don't hold it like this. Just hold it like
that.
this, and you go firm in here, or you can cut yourself, or
Go from the top. Yeah.
And just like it's so smart, like him, like having him be the one to do
Yeah.
that, you know?
And this like motion just reminds me of Psycho. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great.
But just going back to the little details, and stuff like that. I really like. I liked the staging of the scene when it's that scene in the sauna where it's like the woman is like, you know, the prisoner,
okay,
the
okay.
two
Yeah,
prisoners,
yeah.
and then it's the witch, the original witch,
Yeah,
and then
family.
the prisoner, and then in the back there's like Geum-Ja in the back who's like
Yeah.
working on the making it
soap.
slippery with the soap, but like you never really get the context that she
Yeah,
is who, because it's the depth of focus and it's blurred out.
you
So
can miss it.
don't-
I've missed it so many times. It took me so late to even be like,
yeah,
oh yeah, like she's clearly like there is a spot in the frame for her to do
Yeah.
exactly that.
like it's definitely like there.
Yeah.
It's intentionally blurred out, but it's intentionally they intentionally made it so that you can see
Yeah,
the blurred out person in the back doing something, right?
exactly.
And then at the end,
And it's like intentionally taking your attention away.
right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the scene, like, you know, the payoff, it's just like great. And then that's a little like the little like the staging and the, you know, how they thought about doing that and all of that like
Right.
works so well. And then it's really well thought out, right? In the context of the film and what they wanted to achieve for that scene. And that's what I like about this movie is like those things are, you can see it and you can tell, oh, this person has clearly thought about what they wanted this scene to, how they wanted this scene to play out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how to go about it and what it's gonna look like. It pays off. I mean, it really pays off. You know.
Yeah. And it's a little like, you know, black comedy bit too there, right?
She like waves with
Yeah.
the soap. It's the kind-hearted.
Uh,
The kind-hearted.
yeah.
Any gripes that you have with this movie?
I always thought the scene, well, not the scene, but the relationship between Mr. Peck and his wife was weird. Or like, oh, it just kind of felt like
Sure.
it was not weird per se, but like out of the blue. Like
Yeah.
that when we were first introduced to the fact that he has a wife, and then
yeah.
and then like, you know, that moment I was like,
He has a wife? Question mark.
but also the fact that like she was in the jail
Oh yeah.
and all of that kind of almost felt a little too coincidental, you know, like
Well, I mean, like it was, but wasn't.
yeah.
You have to listen to like the audio dialogue.
Well, no, obviously,
Yeah, right,
but I
right.
just feel like it was a little like
Like
too. It felt a little too
Yeah.
like everything fell in line too well.
Yeah.
But like obviously like she's like a gold digger or whatever, and like you know
Mm.
she kind of has the skill set to do that.
Bro, she
but-
got like what 2 jobs to chase after him.
Uh-huh.
Like she explained, she like he was working out as a school teacher, and I think she like applied to the school,
yeah,
and then she found out like through there that he was gonna go buy a car, so she worked at the dealership, and then she turned out to be the one to sell him the car,
Yeah.
and like that's how they met or whatever.
yeah.
Like that's like old boy level of planning, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That's like on some crazy stuff.
But I think the reason it might be kind of I feel like that might be because it's all done through dialogue.
Right, exactly. And I missed it too, and I didn't really pick that up until I went back and like doing my notes and really had to kind of like dig into the scene. Because like I mean like especially the pacing in that act of the movie just moves so fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So like that would be my one like little gripe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially like not me knowing Korean, so like I have to read subtitles and like it's much more easier to kind of drop little tidbits like that. Yeah, I think my biggest or not my biggest, one of my gripes is maybe with Gonshik, the young bakery
Baker,
kid.
yeah.
Like what is really his purpose in the movie? Like what does he honestly contribute to the whole thing, you know? Is what I asked myself like going back like early on and like as I was like skimming through the movie again to like really find out, and it's I couldn't answer the question, to be honest.
I would say like an element of innocence, like element
Right.
of like just another like a foil almost to Geum-Ja and
Sure.
who she is and who he is, kind of like revealing a side of her, like and just kind of reminding her of the child that she killed.
Right.
Well,
Here's a problem. It's like there exist counter arguments to that. Like that's kind of what I thought a little bit too. And I was really thinking of the scene where like when she sleeps with him right afterward, then she kind of explains from her side like the kidnapping and that in fact like she was blackmailed, like Beck basically kidnapped her daughter and then she was blackmailed and that's why she had to plead guilty.
Yeah.
But like that could have kind of really been done anywhere else, to be honest.
Kind of.
Bit. But it's like, just the fact that there's like counter arguments and that, there are other replacements doesn't make it feel strong enough for him to be in it in a way. Like particularly with how tight the story and the characters and everything works in this movie as is. Like especially like you have Jenny. Like if you wanted to kind of like Jenny really does represent like the purity in her and like the opportunity to seek redemption in that.
I think Jenny represents more of the possibility of a continuation of revenge, but it's stopping at Geum-Ja and not going on to Jenny, because the moment when Jenny writes a letter and then she reads it, she translates the letter. Geum-Ja translates the letter, and she starts reading it out loud. I think that's the moment of like the possibility of a cycle of revenge, right? Because Jenny starts talking about like I will never forgive you and all of that, and you have to at least say sorry 3 times, right?
Yeah.
And she says like the not generous Jenny, right? And all of that kind of alludes to the possibility or even almost like the genetics of revenge, like just living in like through Jenny. But the ending kind of showing that the cycle is broken. And so I think that Jenny is not necessarily an embodiment of purity per se, but more of an embodiment of the possibility of another revenge, and that revenge kind of like no longer happening because of obviously the ending and what that ending implies.
Yeah.
Whereas I think what was his name? Wonjik, right?
Yeah.
I think him is more of like this innocence and kind of like the almost the innocence that she could have had,
Right.
given
Yeah.
given that she didn't go through all of this
Mhm.
and all of these different things, and him being a baker is also kind of representative of that, because she's really good at
Yeah.
being a baker,
They basically are like
and they're
are in the same kind of sphere.
yeah,
in a
right,
way,
kind of,
but-
yeah, same kind of sphere, and he is kind of what she could have been almost in one
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah. Well, that's really, I mean, like supporting that, she really projects a lot of that message into him. Like, she tells him, "Oh, when I was your age," like when the detective finds out when he goes to the bakery and then meets her for the first time,
Yeah.
and they're inquiring like who was that guy, and she's saying like, "Oh, when I was your age, when I went to jail and such like that." But she's like
Yeah.
constantly projecting like, "This is what my life was like when I was your
Yeah.
age, and I could have been like this, in this amount of time."
But yeah, I mean, that's just my own kind of idea of
Yeah.
why he maybe not needed, but why he is there.
Sure.
But to your point, I do think he is not the strongest, like, part of the movie. But I don't think it's necessarily like detrimental to the movie at all.
No, agreed.
It was kind of weird having him at the end, which is kind of funny, where he's like following
He's
her,
observing them
and
having their
then
moment.
yeah, and then he's all like doing the snow thing, licking the snow or whatever,
He's part of the hope.
which I feel like could have just have been with Geum-Ja and the daughter, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
It is what it is. What it is. It is what it is. Yeah. I think I feel the same way that you feel about the other scene that you had the gripe with
Mm-hmm.
with the wife.
Yeah.
I think I feel the same way with just like Geum-Ja visiting Jenny in Australia. It's just a wacky scene.
Yeah,
It's so
but I think they played it well in the sense that they didn't try to go with all the dialogue and stuff, but they really kind of went with the Wes Anderson feel, where it's just like, show the shot, show the weird stuff happening, and then next
next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like a quick. It felt like it was literally a detour,
yeah,
to be honest, but like a quick thing to get her into Korea, I guess, to continue on with the story
yeah,
in a weird way. But yeah, it adds to like the comedy and kind of like plays into that, which I feel like is probably the only way to really do that.
yeah.
But like, you look at it, like I was watching, I was like, man, this whole thing is like,
Weird.
yeah, it's
For sure.
It's so.
I do
wild.
agree. It's very weird.
Like they get drunk and then like,
Yeah,
who vibes like that with the mom that comes out of nowhere? That's
yeah.
like, I want to see your kids back.
What did you think about the part where the foster parents come to Korea, and then they try to take Jenny, but then they're in the room and like they're laying down, and then Jenny is like laying down between them.
Yeah.
Were they trying to kill themselves?
I don't know. Like
Like it was
it
weird.
was like the smoke, right?
Yeah, the smoke was
Yeah.
happening.
But I thought it was coming from like the other apartment or something. Like I thought
Yeah,
it was
like-
coming like out of the walls or something.
So
like
I was
that.
watching that, and I didn't quite fully like make out what it was exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or like the intention of it. But my guess was that like they were trying to kill themselves with Jenny.
Which doesn't
in
make
the
sense either,
room.
though. But
Well-
that doesn't make sense.
And exactly, it's kind of weird. And then Jenny wakes up, and then she starts going out and looking for Geum-Ja or whatever. But kind of weird. That's also kind of like left field.
Yeah.
That's something that you don't fully think about, but like it's there.
You think it's from the candles?
That's what I was thinking too. Maybe it was from the candles,
Right.
because they are like, before they leave, they are like rummaging through everything and like going through the candles and stuff, and
Right.
changing the candles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't fully make out like why they were doing the stuff that they were doing,
Yeah. The smoke part doesn't make sense. Like I get I get them taking Jenny back to Australia.
Right.
Whatever.
I would have understood that, but it was just like
But then
the
after that it was like
sequence of them like laying on the bed,
yeah.
and then her like Jenny also laying on the bed, and
Uh-huh.
like, what that were like. So like my thought was like, oh, maybe they're trying to like commit suicide,
End it all.
but like it just kind of didn't feel like it was like it made
But that's
complete sense, or like it was kind of felt like it came out from left field.
not. Yeah.
So there was never. So bottom line is just I just didn't understand the full intent of that
Yeah.
scene. Is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, like Jenny has to wake up to obviously go after her mom for some reason in that scene, right? Which is like, is that a cop out just to achieve that?
Maybe.
Right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So like I wouldn't say it was the best, like it was the most comprehensible scene. Because like, he does so well in all the other scenes
Yeah.
that I felt like this one kind of fell off a little.
Like why?
Yeah.
They should have just brought back one more. Like remember, because before that she sees him like when she's like half asleep, half awake, and then she goes back to sleep. Like if they wanted to wake her up again, like he could have just done that. Like that would have been fine. Yeah, it's like surreal, it's like supernatural, but that's obviously his style, and that's like constantly, especially in this movie, it happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
Like that would have worked. Like it would have been fine. I don't know. I'm not giving like a pro film like tips or anything. No.
I mean, I just I just thought it was interestingly weird.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I almost forgot about that one
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I think that too though adds to like technique wise. What I think is cool is like the use of, like the supernatural in those elements. Like obviously with one more and Jenny sees him, and then even eventually Geum-Ja sees him after she when she goes to the bathroom in the bakery.
Yeah.
And then like he turns older to like the age that he would be, and then she's like she doesn't even she can't apologize. She's not allowed to apologize.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. And even in like
and him turning into
what's his name? I forgot.
Woojin.
Woojin.
Yeah.
Callbacks. But even like in the flashback with the first inmate that were introduced, the one that was like her lover or whatever, and then once it's like her, like when she's recalling why she's in there, right, and it's like her pimp is in the room with her in the cell, and like the memory is happening in real time, like that's kind of cool to do. And then with the Mr. Beck's wife, when she's recalling her past, right, she's like breaking the fourth wall and talking to the camera, like all these kind of like neat little things that grab your attention. Like those are really cool to see. But yeah, my other gripe I think is just with the whole first act. When I watch it again too, it's hard to, we kind of talked about it, it's hard to just like piece together like the narrative a bit, just because like it's all fast paced, right? And it's like basically a mystery movie a little bit. It's like a heist film because you have all these inmates that she's going back to for the favor. Yeah. And each one has their own
specialty.
Flashback. Yeah. Have like specialty, but then they get their own moment. They get their own scene of like, in the cell, what they went in for, like how they relate to her. And it's like, my problem is obviously she's like, we're following Geum-Ja as protagonist. And like, we know that she has this like plan, quote unquote. And she's going to all these, her old cellmates for this plan. Yeah. But we don't even know anything about Geum-Ja really at that point. But we're like, it's like, and every time we get a clue as to like what happened to her and like what her plan even is, it's like we're suddenly distracted by some other like side plot that doesn't really add on to like the bigger plot of what matters. And so it's just like, I get something, then I'm distracted, and it's like, I don't really care about that too much. And then by the time like when it matters, like the halfway point of once they capture Mr. Beck, like after the other inmates' background, you're kind of expected to know like her background already. Yeah. Like you're supposed to have the full picture because it really pretty much goes straight into like the revenge portion of it all.
I think the biggest problem there is I actually do agree with you. I think that the intention was to create almost like an Ocean's 11 of revenge with all of these different characters and with their specialties, and kind of having that as a way of producing the perfect revenge, right? For Geum-Ja. And like she's the one orchestrating it, almost like I think the Brad Pitt character in Ocean's 11 or whatever. But I think the big issue here is that in Ocean's 11 you are with the crew the whole time, right? Yeah. Whereas this one, it's like once we get to that midpoint, it's all about Geum-Ja and no longer
Exactly.
Like the other characters are kind of like second.
They're replaced with the
second-
family members.
Right, they're replaced with his family members, so it's like a completely different movie for the second half.
Yeah.
And so I can see why that would kind of weaken
Yeah.
the foundational structure of the first act, because it does that flip.
Yeah.
The saving grace is that he's still a good enough director to
Yeah.
make the second half just as interesting. and I think that the new cast of like the parents and all of that and the tension and all of that feels good enough.
Right.
And it's interesting enough. And he does have the solid like through line of Geum-Ja and the revenge and setting up Mr. Peck as the villain and all that.
Yeah.
So it still works really well. It's just like you said, it does kind of feel like they're kind of thrown out.
Yeah. Which they are like.
They kind of are, or like they serve a very like minimal role, right?
Yeah.
And almost like you, because of the setup, you almost feel like they are supposed to have a bigger role, maybe.
Right. Right.
Like it's like for the woman who does the sculptures, right? Who comes in and like she basically is like, you know, slave to the witch or whatever.
Yeah.
And like
They're all slaves to her.
right, obviously, but like there is that like huge setup there, and then all she does is like make this like little thing,
ornament.
yeah, the ornament for the, and it just felt very small.
Yeah,
like the payoff felt very small compared to all of that setup.
Everything we just saw.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it kind of feels like kind of a little weak.
Yeah.
But thinking about it almost as not. So I think it's the perspective thing. It's like if you think of it as like a Ocean's 11 like almost thing, and having it be this like big crew and imagining it as this big like cast movie, I think you would go down a wrong road. But you kind of have to think of it as just the things that Geum-Ja, all of the things that Geum-Ja is doing, the plan that she's making, and all the little strings that she's pulling.
Yeah.
And that's how you kind of have to see it for it to kind of feel a lot better.
Yeah, it's wholly like Geum-Ja.
Yeah, it's all about Geum-Ja.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like that's what we really have to kind of get.
And that's like, I mean, that's like that's playing devil's advocate, but that's like, you know, the two-faced coin kind of thing. Because it's like you said, in that one sense, it's really hurting the film in like a broad way. But if you think of it, like I said, as just being Geum-Ja, like it supports her character as the same, right? Like she's the kind-hearted witch or whatever. And like you said, she has this whole past life of being like kind-hearted and whatever. And then when she comes out of jail, she's like, nobody matters. Like I literally did all that just to use you guys for my revenge. And it's just kind of like basically explaining that. And so when you see it like that, it's like, oh, like, okay, it all kind of matters because it's supporting like who Geum-Ja is. Like, it's really just all about her, and she cares like little about anybody else.
Yeah.
And she just wants her revenge. And then it isn't up until she finds out about the other children that the table was turned. And it's no longer about her.
Right.
It's about the family. But it's about, because she's part of the victims, right?
Part of the victims.
So it's like that's like like I said, that's really the saving grace of it. But that's like something that you really gotta pull yourself. You know what I mean? Like you gotta like to understand that. Like you gotta pull that interpretation yourself.
I mean, I don't think, you know, people who are watching this movie don't go. I don't think they go that deeply into it, right? They just watch it for what it is.
It's entertaining,
and
so
I think I think it's definitely entertaining, and it has a lot more moments that pop out that are like explicitly black comedy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, like the moment with the soap, or like the moment when, you know, like the axe moment and like stuff like that are all
the
like
priest.
the priest. Yeah, like all of that are very like, you know, explicitly like just shown like, oh, like, and I think that really caters towards the general audience a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Interesting way to play.
Like we're just breaking it down into very like, you know, just
we're being picky.
yeah, and then just kind of trying to see like the influences and kind of the different like the thought process of like what he might have thought in terms of like the structure of the movie.
Right.
But I don't think that necessarily is good or bad, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of us trying to decipher it and trying to
Understand
like
it.
understand it a little bit more
Right.
in terms that we already know,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we're using all these things. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
We're just
at the
busy.
end of the day, I think if the movie works, it works, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like even like if there is plot holes or like certain things, I don't think it's truly as important. Like the fact that there is plot holes, if the movie thematically and overall makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, for me, it really the only question that I ask for like, is it a good movie? Is like, did I find that movie entertaining? Because at the end of the day, that's really all movies are. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's entertainment, you know.
But like there's plot holes in every movie. You know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. If you dig deep enough,
yeah,
obviously.
exactly. So like it's not that you want a perfect like plot like whole list movie.
Yeah,
It's about like how these different elements aid in telling the
Everything else.
story and
Yeah.
making it interesting and fun.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, I think everything that we're talking about caters to, you know, the replayability of this movie. Like I said, there's a lot that you can unpack by seeing it again. You know, this kind of discussion that we're having, you know, for me anyway, is really coming out of a second watch.
Yeah.
And like really kind of, like I said, we're really understanding it and piecing it together and, you know, missing links that I didn't find the first
Yeah,
time.
but like breaking it down like this, it's actually really interesting just how many almost genres that he just starts mashing together
Yeah, I know.
almost, right?
He's such a, this movie is like super genre.
Right, like
And
think
he's,
about it. Like
so
there's
80s
like
it.
we talked about almost that heist
Yeah.
like structure. There's also the 12 Angry Men structure in it. There's also the mystery element of it.
Right.
Like there's also obviously the revenge element, the almost the thriller element in the middle with the action, like when she's almost getting kidnapped.
Yeah.
And almost like the black comedy bits that are like sparsed into it.
Yeah. It's like the first act is Ocean's 11 of like this master revenge plan that she has.
The first beginning is like the mystery part of it.
Oh yeah,
and then,
piecing together.
Yeah,
and then
piecing
it goes,
together, and then it goes into the Ocean's 11, the heist.
Yeah. And then the flip is like,
and then it goes
gritty
into
crime
the
drama.
gritty crime, the thriller, almost like the cat and mouse.
Yeah. Just like a detective solving case kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's really like, it's the dark comedy that glues it all together.
Right.
Really.
And then once that happens, we go into the courtroom like drama.
A little bit. And then it ends as like a family drama.
They just put everything in it. They just put everything into it.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, like I said, super genre, but you know, he plays it so well. Like he really is using it to his advantage.
Yeah.
And that's like really key. That's really him. Like honestly, like that and Old Boy, that's really kind of his style now, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, as like I talked about as a conclusive story, like this movie really just feels so different than the other three. I mean, just for its an ending alone.
And the other two.
Yeah. Like we said, it's super conclusive. Like, not only is it like we said, like a Ocean's 11 kind of ensemble cast feel, but it's an ensemble cast for the Vengeance trilogy. Like everybody's in it.
Everyone's in it.
Everyone is in it. They have a part somewhere. You know, it's really about the same theme, but completely varied. Like really changed it up all the way through. Where I was reading, he explains it really well. So I found this this interview, and he was saying, for me, it's an antidote to, like, he's kind of explaining why he put a female in this role rather versus a man. So I guess the antidote to the masculinity, the impulse, violence, and explosions of rage and hate in the first two films.
Yeah.
So Lady Vengeance is about femininity,
Calculating.
Atonement and the search for forgiveness and salvation. And humor is an important element. If Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance dealt with social issues and Old Boy was mythical, then Lady Vengeance is a fairy tale. And humor plays a key role in making it into a fairy tale. And so, I mean, that really like outplays the movie. It's, you know, fairy tale, or for me, it was like more like spiritual, because obviously, you know, spirituality has a huge thing with her. But like, just this movie is so soft compared to the other two movies as well. And like I was kind of looking, and he was saying like it's not really, or he wouldn't consider it to be a feminist film, and I wouldn't say it's like purely feminist film either. But it's a movie that has like a woman's touch.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
definitely.
So like it's just soft, and versus like in the other two where it's really hard boiled vengeance, and it's really playing to like if like the conclusion to revenge is just like violence leads to more violence and the things that we talked about the last two episodes. This movie is like flipping the table, and like there is an opportunity for atonement. There's an opportunity to
exactly like it feels like the first two movies feels like it's stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of the circle of violence, whereas this one kind of breaks that.
Right.
And I think that's almost a feminine thing, like understanding and coming to terms with, and finally like making the atonement and making coming to terms with that. And I think the scene at the end with Jenny and Geum-Ja like really kind of pushes that and emphasizes that.
Right. And also too, just like even in story, where if Old Boy's a little different, like in the both two movies, you feel that like the characters lost everything out of like their only goal is to seek revenge because they lost everything, and after they got revenge, like they were still left with nothing at the end, and that's why there was like that feeling of just dread and like hopelessness and just kind of like emptiness at the end. Like it really doesn't breed like satisfaction. But here, because of Jenny, like she has something at the end of it.
She didn't lose everything,
right?
And she still has something to live for.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, well, the first one, he's dead.
Yeah.
Second one, he's lost everything, even his own like will to live, almost, right?
Right.
Whereas this one, like she still has, and she says it herself. She's like, I don't know, like if I'm like deserving of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
But she still has Jenny at the end.
Yeah.
And so that definitely is different.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you said, it's a really good like bow at the end of this trilogy, quote unquote, because it shows that there can be something more than just having revenge. And I think one of the reasons why it allows for that too is because I think that moment in the middle, that turning point, if she realized that the guy had killed all the other children and she still took revenge on her own, I think it would have been a very different movie, what I mean, in terms of like what it meant.
Yeah.
And then I think that the fact that she, instead of getting revenge on her own terms, but kind of brought in all these other people and kind of had them like, it's funny because it's almost like it's like it's no longer a personal revenge.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's more like they became their own little justice system.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact that she pushed aside her own personal vengeance to incorporate other people and kind of respect their their situation and have them also come in, and it's kind of funny because it's like they're still getting revenge, and it's still brutal and still like right, and they're still putting judgment on this person. But I think the fact is that every person has that, right? Every person has that desire to have justice and have vengeance and have almost like revenge is just like the next step of justice, right? Like it's just like I will take justice into my own hands.
Yeah.
But I think Geum-Ja was like, I was about to do that, but then now I kind of put it into the hands of the many.
Right.
And I think that kind of it might not be the explicit message, but I think that still is a relevant message or like a point in the movie that it's trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really like I think counter like it's a counter message to everything else that we've seen because everything that we've seen is revenge is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is it is just a personal, feeling or like enactment or impulse.
Yeah.
And it is a very impulsive thing. But because once she found out that it was no longer just her own
Ordeal.
ordeal, yeah, she chose to open it up to the other people because
We're
they all
all
feel
suffering.
the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that just counterplays everything else because she could have done
Right, she could
that
just
thing.
killed him herself.
Exactly.
She already was in that position too.
Yeah. So it's like I don't know. I don't want to say like kind of the answer is to like open it up.
But in one sense it kind of is, because like if you kind of think about like even just like the right way to deal with it, right? It's like to go to the cops or whatever, right? Like that is kind of like opening up to the masses, right?
Yeah.
And letting the people decide almost like
It's like don't let it be personal. Is really
right. It's kind of what and the redemption at the end is like she doesn't feel like, well, she doesn't lose everything, right? Because of that.
Right.
Because if it's just solely personal, right?
Yeah.
She probably would have lost everything, right? And even like the end where she was trying to take Jenny back to Australia or like send her back to Australia too. Like she already had her in her heart, like I can't be with her anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the end, it kind of changes that, right?
Right.
Like that has changed at the end.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, funny enough too, like she wasn't the one that even like she had no physical part in like of the execution at the end of the day.
Right.
She like really let the other party members do it. She was just just the orchestrator.
She just shot the dead body.
Yeah,
It's
like,
cool.
I put my 2 pieces in there.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, too, like I said, I mean that just that bakery scene where they all celebrate their kids' birthdays is really powerful, but really opens up to, I was kind of reading and Park Chan-Wook was saying, like, that they're all in it. Like, it had to be a unanimous thing, right? And obviously she kind of threatened them, like, well, if one of you guys back out, or like tell the cops
I've
or whatever,
killed people before.
you know what I'm capable of. I'll find you. You know what I mean? But as like once like they're all doing the execution, it's like kind of culminating to like they're all part of it.
Yeah.
They all like take that picture together for like evidence, whatever. Like it's like a blackmail thing. But once they all are at that table together and they're celebrating and they're eating the cake, like none of them leave. They all have like the shared moment. Like none of them want to be alone. Like in that moment,
Yeah.
they all have like a weird shared unity of
A bond almost.
of like, you do that revenge and then you feel empty or guilt afterward,
Right.
but they're not experiencing it alone.
The comfort of people and being able to share the burden of suffering together.
Exactly.
And maybe that is the message of the story. Interesting enough, right?
Suffer together.
Right, because
But,
like you said, but it points to the fact that the other two films, all the characters, they are very alone, right? Like they all sought revenge alone, and it was very personal, and they were left alone, right?
Yeah.
Like they had nobody else around them.
And there were like all those characters felt. I mean, like Sang Hong and Min Sik, they both like felt the gravity of like what they did. Like
Right.
when they like at the end of the day, once it was done, it was like they both paid for
The price, yeah.
the price of that it happened. But even just like I feel on a personal level too, like it just all like came crashing down, like just an unbearable weight of it. But with these group of people, like they all shared it. It wasn't the same if it was just one person kind of
Right.
bearing that whole thing.
Exactly.
So
Agreed.
it was what it happened. It's just like smart. It's like so refreshing and it feels like I said, like conclusive and just on the opposite spectrum of the other two stories.
Mhm.
Right? Anything else you wanted to add?
I did like the scene when Geum-Ja is hugging the daughter, and she starts. It's the translation part when she's, when Mr. Beck is translating Geum-Ja's apology, and she starts hugging the daughter,
Yeah.
and daughter behind her back is like counting the number of times she said sorry.
I really like that, yeah.
I really like that little touch.
Just like that scene and then the scene before it are just perfect tie-ins. Like it's like you said, like it's all purposeful.
Yeah.
Because like before that, right? That's when she ties up Beck, and then Jenny's sleeping and she finds the note, and then there's like that montage of her deciphering the note into Korean.
Yeah.
And she finds out, like, she reads the notes and she's like, she knows that Jenny wants an apology and like lists her
Three
terms.
times, yeah.
And then right after that is when she basically does exactly that. She confesses and explains why she abandoned her, and then does the apology 3 times. Like it just goes like beat right after the next beat, you know? But it plays really well, like scene and shot wise. I love the 360 shot, and like they composite Jenny into it, you know?
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And then Beck to like translate is so like it's the same thing with like the detective teaching like stabbing. It's just so the juxtaposition of that.
It's great.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's all pretty cool.
Making use of his teaching skills. his English.
Too soon. It's funny that it's like this movie is like the only movie where the person that is like the antagonist, or the person that is being taken revenge on, like has such little like involvement in the story, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
Like Mr. Beck is really just the bad guy.
Yeah.
And nothing more. You know, like we don't sympathize with him at all. Versus the other two, we have at least some understanding of the other guys.
Yeah.
But this one, it's like,
He's just an asshole. He's
Yeah.
just a complete degen.
He deserved an axe to wherever that guy did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, pretty cool. Pretty good movie. Definitely the most entertaining of the 3. I don't know. Like, I think Old Boy is still just like special.
I mean, they're all entertaining. But I just like the movie. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the refreshing that aspect of it.
I think so.
Well, and also I like movies that kind of are like ends with a high note. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I probably like this movie the most.
I mean, it's the easiest to watch for sure.
You know, it's funny because it is the easiest to watch,
Yeah.
but there are scenes that are really brutal.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
like
I mean,
especially
really-
when the kids are crying.
Oh yeah.
And then there's that scene when the kid is literally like has a noose around his neck, and then the juxtaposition of the kid like the falling and then
And the
the woman
grandmother.
grandma.
Yeah, that was,
Dude, that is just like, don't show me a scene like that, bro.
he pulls no punches.
Yeah.
But, like-
and the beauty of that shot too is he's not even showing the actual like
Exactly.
kid falling, but it's the expression of that, right?
Right.
With the grandma falling. And I just think that's just such a like tasteful is the wrong word, but I'm gonna use it here. It's such a tasteful way of doing that.
Put that word in the distance for me, bro. You gotta be like tasteful.
It's
It was
such a perfect way of expressing
down
that scene and that idea, right?
It's like we said, it's one of those things that just fits. Like it's gotta be like that.
And
you
it's
know?
like you don't have to show brutal,
yeah, no.
but then you can imply it or like you can express it in different ways, and that creativity is what makes it so fun and interesting.
Yeah. Maybe not fun in this case, but
Well,
interesting.
It is shocking to say the least.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's even more shocking
Yeah.
than just showing that. I feel like.
I really loved like when it's revealed that there's a microphone in the room and that he can hear the discourse and like the judgment that is being enacted
The
on
calculation,
it.
the discourse between people on how to deal with him.
That is like the most sinister shit ever.
That's a nice little touch.
That
for
was
sure.
such a nice touch.
She that's pretty
That was jacked.
instilling, and I love the fact that the fact that he's scared for his life, right? But also they're scared of the monster that they're about to approach as well.
Right.
And I love that they're both scared somehow, right?
Yeah.
Where like he's scared because he's gonna die, but like they're scared because this person is a monster, right?
Yeah.
And just that like dynamic is just so fun to watch.
Yeah. Such a well.
And fun is the right word there.
Fuck that guy.
Fun. I love it. I love seeing that. I love seeing the tension and and just seeing the different characters and like the realness there, right? That feeling is so real, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you having some monster like literally killed your children.
Yeah.
Like you would feel scared to face that person, and yet like, you know,
you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You got it.
Exactly.
You do it. Yeah, you feel justified. Yeah, it's definitely such a good, like, just that act. That whole thing is so good.
Yeah, I really like the last act.
Yeah, it's really good. Such a like rare movie though. You know, there's really just no other movie like this one.
What do you mean? There's Old Boy.
But it's different though, man.
What do you mean? There's Mr. Vengeance. What do you mean?
No, that one's Memories of Murder. That one's too similar to something else. But yeah, I think that's good. I think that'll wrap it up. So that's quote unquote the end of the Vengeance trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, he's got another one, and that's what we're gonna end with.
Handmaiden.
Next week will be The Handmaiden. You never seen The Handmaiden?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't really think of it as a revenge story.
I guess
to be honest,
not. Well, like the end is
kind of, yeah. There are elements, but it's not like explicitly.
You know what it is? Is that all these movies are revenge films, like from the beginning, and this movie starts off different,
right?
And then like midway, it's a revenge.
You kind of find out.
There's a plot thing that happens that's like, now we got to get revenge.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's kind of why it's a long movie. Actually, this one's
it's
pretty lengthy, but it's really good. It's definitely one of my favorites.
I love the actors in it.
Oh yeah, everybody's really good. So we get a little bit of both worlds. I know I'm continuing this discussion, but when the bakery guy, when it's like the Australian family comes to the restaurant,
he starts speaking Japanese.
He starts speaking Japanese. I can't understand him. So he tries the only second language that he knows. Takimashita. Takimasenka.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Well, yeah. Great movie, Miss Vengeance.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you have not watched it, you should watch it.
Why
you should have watched it though. But I hope that our discussion may have a
spark some interest.
Yeah, spark some interest. If you haven't watched it, and if you did watch it, just giving you maybe different perspectives on it.
We tend to go a little ham on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next week, watch the animated. Came out 2016. It should be easy to find.
The animated.
I mean,
the handmaiden.
Handmaiden, the animated. No, came out 2016. Yeah.
I think it is on Prime, Amazon Prime.
Oh, is it really?
It might be. I think because I watched it on Amazon Prime way back when.
Okay, so maybe it's.
But
yeah, actually, I did too.
Yeah, so it might be on Amazon Prime. So hopefully it's there if you want to watch it there.
It's newer, so it honestly should be.
Yeah, it's very and it's popular, so it's.
Yeah, but yep. Follow us on latest episodes on Patreon. Give us a subscribe there if you want to support the channel. You know, we'd love to grow. We've got some interesting things coming that way, some bonus things, and we'll be releasing every episode here. But also follow us on Instagram as well as Twitter and also on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening. See you next week. Peace.
Bye-bye.